welcome to the deep dive. Today we're getting into someone really fascinating and honestly pretty complicated. A figure whose art absolutely changed American performance, but whose life choices, they cast this long shadow that, well, you just can't ignore.
That's right. We're talking about Elia Kazan.
Elia Kazan. You really can't discuss 20th century theater or film without grappling with him.
Absolutely not. He was this revolutionary force, a director who didn't just block scenes. He, psychologically unlocked actors, got that raw, visceral truth out of them. But his story is the ultimate paradox, isn't it? The acclaimed master,
Yeah.
the cinematic genius.
And the informer.
Yeah.
It's always there, side by side.
Always.
And that duality, that's exactly what we want to explore today. We need to dig into how this man-born Elias Kazansoglou, way back in 1909, how he transformed directing, how he shaped giants like Marlon Brando and James Dean, and how that incredible artistic revolution got so deeply, permanently tangled up with his testimony in 1952, before the House Un-American Activities Committee, HUAC.
Yeah, the HUAC testimony is central. But to even start understanding Kazan, you have to place him as an outsider from the very beginning. Born in Constantinople, Ottoman Empire, Greek heritage.
Right, Anatolian Greeks, a community with this ancient history, but always living as a minority, always aware of that status.
Exactly, and that shapes you. Then the family immigrates.
He's only 4, right?
Yeah.
When they come to New York City in 1913, his dad's a rug merchant, so they weren't destitute, but still very much navigating that immigrant experience.
Absolutely. Straddling two worlds, the traditional Greek culture at home, and then the, bustling, sometimes unwelcoming American street. That feeling, that constant sense of being on the edge, looking in.
That became core to his art, didn't it?
Totally. It wasn't just biographical data. It was like the psychological engine driving him. Think about the characters he was drawn to later. The alienated, the marginalized.
Terry Malloy in Waterfront. Cal Trask in East of Eden.
Stavros in America.
Right.
That desperate yearning. He understood that particular kind of hunger that comes from starting behind, that fight for dignity, for acceptance.
And that drive led him first to Williams College, then Yale Drama School. But the real fire, the place where his talent was forged, wasn't really the Ivy League, was it?
No, not primarily. It was this incredibly intense, idealistic, and frankly revolutionary collective called the Group Theater.
He joined in 32. And this wasn't just putting on plays.
No way. It was born out of the Depression. It was a mission. They wanted to create a new, uniquely American kind of drama. They were pushing back against, the sort of fluffy, artificial Broadway stuff.
Their focus was social issues, working class lives, real grit.
Unflinching psychological realism. That was the goal. They championed playwrights like Clifford Odets.
Waiting for Lefties Awake and Sing, plays about strikes, poverty, the anxiety of the era, right there on stage.
Exactly. And this environment, this is where Kazan learned the absolute bedrock of his craft. How to observe people authentically, how to connect that inner emotional turmoil with the external social pressures.
And demanding that gut-level emotional truth from the actors.
Which brings us to method acting. Because the group theater, that's where it really took root in America. They were all in on Konstantin Stanislavski's techniques.
Okay, let's pause there. For anyone listening, the method. What did that actually mean in Kazan's hands? It gets thrown around a lot.
Right. Well, fundamentally, it means stripping away the artificiality, the acting. Stanislavski talked about emotional recall, the actor digging into their own past experiences, their own feelings, to genuinely embody what the character's going through.
So not just pretending to be sad, but finding something in your own life that resonates with that sadness.
Precisely. And Kazan and the group, they really ran with this. They focused on making the character's inner life, their psychology, visible and immediate through behavior. It wasn't just about feeling it. It was about understanding the character inside and out, their history, their desires, how they walked, talked, everything.
A deep psychological dive. And Kazan became a master at translating that inner stuff into physical action on stage and later on screen.
But crucially, this period, this hotbed of artistic and social ideas, it also planted the seeds for the conflict that would define him later.
Because the Depression was brutal. And for artists, intellectuals grappling with that collapse, radical political ideas held an appeal.
Exactly. The American Communist Party back then seemed to offer a structured way to fight fascism, to fight economic injustice. So in 1934, Kazan joined briefly.
Yeah, the sources stress it was really short-lived, like a year and a half.
About that, yeah. And he left pretty quickly because he chafed against the party's rigidity. He was an artist first, and the party demanded conformity, ideological control over what you created.
They wanted art to serve the party line.
Right. And Kazan valued that creative freedom too much. It was a fundamental clash.
But that brief period, just 18 months or so of political engagement as a young man, decades later, that would come back to haunt him in the most profound way.
It's incredible, isn't it? That brief membership became the lightning rod during the McCarthy era, forcing that impossible choice on him.
But, okay, before we get to the HUAC moment, there's this explosion of success. By the 1940s, he's directing full-time and getting this reputation.
Oh, yeah. A reputation for being able to pull these incredibly raw, honest performances out of actors. It was like he had a direct line to their emotional core.
And then comes 1947. Tennessee Williams, a streetcar named Desire on Broadway.
Game changer. Total game changer. Not just a hit play, it felt revolutionary. And a huge part of that was his casting of this young, relatively unknown actor named Marlon Brando as Stanley Kowalski.
And this is the moment people point to, right, where American acting just shifts.
Completely. Kazan brought Williams's poetry down to this visceral, almost primal level. And Brando, steeped in that method training Kazan fostered, he just shed all the old stagey stuff, the mumbling, the aggression, that predatory way he moved.
It didn't feel like acting. It felt like watching a real dangerous person.
Exactly. The power wasn't projected outwards in the old way. It radiated from Brando's internal conflict made visible. Kazan knew how to show, not just tell, through physicality.
And then, just 2 years later, 1949, he does it again. Arthur Miller's Death of a Salesman.
Another towering achievement. Lee J. Cobb as Willie Loman. Pulitzer Prize. Kazan just got how to fuse Willie's internal breakdown, the delusion, the desperation with the external failure of the American dream.
He made Willie's psychology feel like a tangible force on stage.
Used the set, the lighting, Cobb's physicality, it was all integrated. So yeah, on Broadway, he's literally redefining realism. And at the same time, he's building a solid career in Hollywood, too.
Showing he could handle serious themes there as well.
Right. A tree grows in Brooklyn in '45. That showed his knack for intimate family stories. And then Gentleman's Agreement in '47.
Which won him his first directing Oscar.
Yeah, and tackled anti-Semitism head-on, which was pretty bold for a major studio film back then. So he's established, respected, successful, tackling important issues.
Which brings us right to 1952. He's at the peak of his powers. And this is when the past, that brief Communist Party membership, catches up.
You have to understand the climate in '52. The Red Scare was absolutely peaking. McCarthyism, HUAC had immense power. People are terrified.
And refusing to testify, refusing to name names meant the blacklist. Career over. Public disgrace.
Instantly. And Kazan had actually been called before HUAC once already. The first time, he refused to name anyone.
But that refusal brought immense pressure, right? From the studios, from political figures. Basically, cooperate or your career is finished.
Exactly that. So under that intense pressure, in April 1952, Kazan went back before HUAC. And this time, he named names.
8 people. People he'd known from that small Communist Party unit back in the 30s.
And the consequences were immediate and devastating for those named. The blacklist was real. It destroyed lives. People like Zero Mostel, a brilliant actor Kazan had worked with, his career was just obliterated.
The fallout in the artistic community, especially New York theater and film, must have been catastrophic.
Oh, it was. And the most personal, most painful break was with Arthur Miller, his closest friend, his most important collaborator. Miller was utterly appalled.
Miller himself was under scrutiny, wasn't he?
He was. And he saw Kazan's decision as a profound betrayal, not just of principle, but of friendship.
Their relationship just ended right there. And Miller's response, artistically, was The Crucible.
Written shortly after, you can't read it outside that context. The Salem witch trials is the searing allegory for McCarthyism, for the horror of informing, of saving yourself by condemning others.
But Kazan didn't just shrink away. He defended himself. Publicly.
Very publicly. Took out a full-page ad in the New York Times. His justification was complex and definitely self-serving in parts. First, he argued the Communist Party was a genuine threat, a totalitarian force, and he had a duty to expose it.
In the second part, the more personal reason,
that he refused to be a martyr. He believed he could do more good, create more important art by continuing to work, that sacrificing his career on principle wouldn't actually achieve anything. Better to keep making films than fade away.
And that's the crux of the whole debate, isn't it? For decades now. Was it civic duty, as he framed it, or was it career preservation at the expense of others?
The sources make it clear there's no easy answer. It's both, probably. The betrayal is real, the damage was real. But it's also true that if he hadn't named names, the masterpieces that followed, like Waterfront, might never have been made.
So his legacy splits right down the middle. The genius director, the reviled informer. But ironically, maybe that very conflict fueled some of his most powerful work. Before we get to those films, though, let's talk about the place where so many of those actors got their start.
Right, the Actors Studio. The Engine Room. Kazan co-founded it in 1947 with Cheryl Crawford and Robert Lewis. Lee Strasberg became the famous face later, but initially it was Kazan's practical, performance-focused application of the method that really drove it.
And it became ground zero for the next wave of American actors. Kazan had this incredible eye for talent, didn't he? Raw, volatile talent.
Almost uncanny. He discovered or gave huge breaks to Brando, James Dean, Warren Beatty, Paul Newman. The list goes on.
And his approach to them was intense.
Deeply psychological. He wasn't just giving blocking. He was guiding them to the why. Hours spent on backstory, motivation, core desires, pushing them to tap into their own vulnerability, their own pain, that emotional truth to fuel the character.
Like with Brando. He saw more than just talent there.
He saw that unique mix, didn't he? The sexuality, the vulnerability, the danger, the sheer authenticity. It was revolutionary.
And Kazan knew how to translate that method training into something audiences could see. You mentioned Brando's physicality in Streetcar.
Exactly. The method wasn't just internal navel-gazing for Kazan. It had to manifest physically. Stanley's slouch wasn't just a choice. It was Stanley. The mumbling wasn't bad technique. It conveyed his inarticulateness, his primal nature.
They made 3 huge films together. Streetcar, the film, Viva Zapata, and of course On the Waterfront. But even that relationship soured a bit because of HUAC, right?
Yeah, the sources confirm Brando was deeply principled about things like that. He became disillusioned with Kazan personally after the testimony, which must have added another layer of complexity to their work together.
And speaking of complex, conflicted relationships, Anthony Quinn.
Oh, yeah. Quinn, like Kazan, felt like an outsider Mexican-Irish background. They had that connection, that understanding of having to fight for your place.
Kazan directed him in Viva Zapata in '52. Quinn won his first Oscar for it.
A brilliant performance as Zapata's brother. But then, the personal betrayal. It's reported Kazan had an affair with Quinn's wife, Catherine DeMille.
Which ended their marriage. That's devastating.
It really is. It speaks volumes about Kazan's complex and sometimes destructive personal life intertwined with his artistic one. But even after that immense personal pain, Quinn later still acknowledged Kazan's genius as a director.
The consensus seems to be maybe a difficult, even damaging man personally, but an unparalleled artist.
That seems to capture the dichotomy. Which brings us to James Dean.
Another discovery. Basically unknown. Plucked from the Actors Studio for East of Eden in 1955.
Kazan saw something similar to what he'd seen in Brando, that deep well of vulnerability hidden under this sort of nervous, rebellious energy.
And he didn't try to smooth Dean out, did he? He leaned into the awkwardness.
Totally. He used Dean's natural fidgetiness, his intensity, to define Cal Trask, that troubled kid desperate for his father's love.
That scene where Cal tries to give his father the money he earned, and Adam Trask, the father, just rejects him. Dean's reaction is pure anguish.
It's not just crying, it's this full-body explosion of hurt and frustration. Kazan pushed him there, got that raw nerve on camera.
And the tragedy, of course, is that Dean died so young, just 24, right after the film came out.
Yeah. Kazan captured this unique, fleeting brilliance, and then it was gone. Cemented Dean's image forever as that icon of youthful angst.
Okay, so now we have to dive into the films themselves, especially the ones where Kazan seems to be grappling with his own choices, his own identity. Starting with the big one, the cinematic defense. On the Waterfront.
Waterfront, 1954. You absolutely cannot watch this film without seeing the HUAC context. It reads as Kazan's direct, almost defiant justification for his testimony.
The story itself is the parallel. Terry Malloy, Brando's character, he's an informer. A stool pigeon, they call him. He testifies against the corrupt union bosses.
The parallels aren't subtle at all. They're right there on the surface. Terry's fear, if I spill, my life ain't worth a nickel, that echoes Kazan's own fear of being blacklisted. And Bud Schulberg, who wrote it, he had also named names, so it was a shared defense.
And the film gives an explicit moral argument for informing, through the priest, Father Barry, Carl Malden's character.
Right. His sermon on the docks. Some people think the crucifixion only took place on Calvary. He frames testifying against corruption not as betrayal, but as a moral necessity, as doing Christ's work right there on the waterfront. It's the film's ethical core, justifying Terry's and, by extension, Kazan's actions.
But politics aside, artistically, the film is just a powerhouse.
Undeniably. Brando's performance is incredible. So layered. He's this tough longshoreman, ex-boxer, but struggling with his conscience, barely able to articulate it, and so tender in the scenes with Eva Marie Saint.
And that taxi cab scene with Rod Steiger as his brother Charlie, that could have been a contender. It's legendary for a reason.
Oh, it's a masterclass. The writing is perfect, but Kazan's direction, the claustrophobia of the cab forcing this confrontation, Brando's restraint, the way he delivers that line, not with anger, but this deep, soul-crushing regret.
It's all internal struggle made visible. Pure method acting and directing.
Exactly. And the look of the film reinforces it. Kazan insisted on shooting on location, Hoboken, New Jersey, real docks, real cold, real grit. Boris Kaufman's cinematography gives it this documentary feel.
It feels authentic.
Yeah.
Which makes the drama hit harder.
And it swept the Oscars. 8 awards. Best Picture, Best Director for Kazan, Best Actor for Brando. Huge triumph. But even then, at the ceremony,
the division was visible. Reports said some people pointedly did not applaud when Kazan won.
Yeah, the split was already there right from the moment of its greatest success.
Okay, so after Waterfront, the justification piece, he makes East of Eden in 55, which feels different, more focused on internal family pain.
Definitely. If Waterfront was about public conscience, Eden is about private anguish. It's this raw, emotional dive into family dynamics, focusing on Cal Trask, James Dean's character, and his desperate, almost painful need for his father's love.
His father, Adam, played by Raymond Massey, who's so rigid and moralistic.
Exactly. And visually, Kazan did something really interesting. He shot it in CinemaScope, that widescreen format usually used for epics.
Right, not typically for intimate dramas.
But he and his cinematographer, Ted McCord, used the wide frame to isolate the characters. They'd often be pushed to the edges, emphasizing the emotional distance between them, especially between Cal and Adam. The beautiful Salinas Valley landscape feels vast and lonely, almost oppressive.
Making that father-son gap feel physically immense.
Yeah, it explored that complexity, the weight of the past, the search for identity, even the immigrant theme again with Adam's background. It was another critical hit, more Oscar nominations.
But Kazan wasn't finished exploring his own roots, that outsider theme, the cost of the American dream, which leads to America in 1963. Many call this his most personal film.
Absolutely his most personal. He wrote it, produced it, directed it, based on his own uncle's story, Stavros, a young Greek man trying desperately to get to America around the turn of the century.
And it's not a romanticized immigrant story, is it?
Not at all. It's epic in length, nearly 3 hours, and deliberately paced because Kazan wanted you to feel the sheer difficulty, the years-long struggle, the setbacks, the compromises.
Stavros isn't presented as a simple hero. He has to make some tough, morally gray choices to survive and get to America.
He has to betray people, manipulate situations. He's driven, almost ruthless in his ambition. The film suggests that sometimes achieving that American dream requires sacrificing pieces of yourself along the way.
That theme, again, compromise being necessary to reach a goal. Echoes of the HUAC justification, maybe, but applied to the nation's founding myth itself.
Could be read that way. And the look is stark. Haskell Wexler shot it in black and white, very documentary-like. It feels raw, authentic. It captures that hunger for dignity, for freedom, but also the immense cost.
Kazan won the Oscar for Best Screenplay for it, a real labor of love.
Definitely. And just to round things out, we should mention a few others quickly to show his range.
Sure. The film was Streetcar in 51, obviously huge. Pushed censorship boundaries.
Viva Zapata in 52, with Brando and Quinn exploring revolution and its pitfalls.
And then A Face in the Crowd in 57, which feels incredibly relevant today.
Totally prescient. Andy Griffith, terrifyingly good, as this folksy entertainer who becomes a manipulative media demagogue through television. A sharp critique of celebrity culture and media power. Way ahead of its time.
And Splendor in the Grass in 61, Warren Beatty's debut, tackling repressed sexuality, mental health. Pretty bold stuff for the early 60s.
Yeah. Across the board, you see him using mainstream film to explore these really complex, often dark, psychological and social themes with this signature realism.
So let's talk about that signature. If the films are the result, what was the process? What was Kazan's directing philosophy, fundamentally?
At its core, it was always about psychological truth and serving the actor. The performance came first, before any fancy camera work. His techniques were all geared towards getting that authentic inner life onto the screen.
We talked about psychological depth, the intense backstory work.
Right. Actors needed to know everything about their character, even stuff never mentioned in the script. That depth informed every glance, every pause. It's like that iceberg analogy. Most of it is unseen, but it grounds what you do see.
And that inner life had to become physical life.
Absolutely crucial for Kazan. He was obsessed with how psychology manifests physically. Cal Trask's nervous energy, Terry Malloy's slumped shoulders. These weren't just actor tics. They were expressions of the character's internal state.
He also insisted on lots of rehearsal, right? Unlike the quick pace of some Hollywood productions.
Weeks, sometimes months. It wasn't about drilling lines, it was about exploration, finding the character, building relationships, so that when the cameras rolled, the actors were so immersed, they could achieve that feeling of spontaneity, of living the scene.
Which allowed for moments of naturalism and improvisation, like that famous glove moment in Waterfront.
Exactly. Eva Marie Saint drops her glove, Brando picks it up, puts it on his own hand, completely unscripted. But Kazan saw the truth in it. Terry's awkward tenderness, his protectiveness, and kept it. That's the magic he fostered.
And finally, his love for location shooting.
Yeah, get out of the studio.
Yeah.
Hoboken, the Salinas Valley. Grounding the story in a real place gave it that extra layer of authenticity, made the actors feel the environment.
The impact seems massive. He fundamentally changed American acting by bringing the method to the screen.
Single-handedly, you could argue. That shift from presentational theatrical acting to the internalized, psychologically nuanced style we see now, so much of that traces back to Kazan and the actors he nurtured.
And those actors, Brando, Dean, Beatty, Newman, they became the defining stars of a whole new era of cinema.
An era focused on complex characters, moral ambiguity, psychological depth, reflecting that post-war American mood.
And his influence extended to filmmakers, too.
Oh, hugely. Directors like Martin Scorsese, Francis Ford Coppola, the generation that came up in the 70s, focused on gritty realism, flawed characters, intense psychological portraits. They look directly to Kazan.
Scorsese has often talked about learning from Kazan how to work with actors, how to get that raw truth on film.
Yeah, Kazan proved you could make challenging adult dramas that were also commercially successful and critically acclaimed. He broadened what American cinema could tackle.
Which brings us inevitably to the final chapter, 1999, the honorary Oscar.
Yeah. Almost 50 years after the testimony, the wound clearly hadn't healed. The Academy decides to give the 89-year-old Kazan a Lifetime Achievement Award.
And it just explodes. The controversy erupts all over again.
Fiercely. Can you honor the art without forgiving the action? Does celebrating Kazan diminish the suffering of the blacklisted? It forced Hollywood to look right at its own complicated, painful history.
The Academy stuck to its guns. It's about the films, the contribution to cinema. But many people were outraged. Protests were planned.
And the ceremony itself, that image is burned into Hollywood history. Kazan comes out, frail, supported by Scorsese and De Niro, who clearly admired his work immensely.
And the audience response is just split right down the middle. You can see it.
Totally visible. Some people leap to their feet, huge applause. Warren Beatty, Julie Christie, others honoring the giant. And then others just sit there, stone-faced. Ed Harris, Nick Nolte, Amy Madigan, pointedly, silently refusing to applaud the informer.
Wow. Just a perfect visual of that unresolved conflict.
It really was. Kazan accepted the award, thanked people he worked with, but notably didn't address the controversy, didn't apologize.
And it leaves us with those same hard questions, doesn't it? How much does historical context, the intense pressure of the Red Scare, mitigate a moral failing? Can you, should you, separate the artist from the art?
No easy answers, then or now. That 1999 moment basically ensured that the debate around Kazan would never fully go away. Every time someone discovers his films, they have to grapple with this legacy.
So in the end, his story remains just, profoundly complex, one of the absolute greats of American film and theater, a transformer of the craft.
No question. But also, a man who made a choice under pressure that betrayed colleagues and stained his name forever. History's judgment is permanently divided.
But maybe the final judgment, if there is one, rests with the films themselves. They still resonate. They tell powerful stories about conscience, betrayal, courage, cowardice, all the big human themes.
And what's really striking, I think, is that Kazan's own life ended up being one of those complex moral dramas he loved to explore on screen. The conflict, the ambiguity, the struggle between ideals and survival. It's all right there in his biography.
So maybe the provocative thought for you, the listener, is this. Go back and watch On the Waterfront again, but watch it with this duality firmly in mind. Think about how that single film works on two levels simultaneously. as an undeniable masterpiece of cinema, lauded worldwide.
And as this incredibly potent personal document of moral compromise, part confession, part justification, all wrapped up in brilliant, unforgettable filmmaking.